Welcome back, everybody, for another episode of Chasing Ghosts. This is the video series where I talk about those hard to find, those impossible to find comics, those books you just got to get lucky sometimes in stumbling across. These are just some lower prints, some ratio variants, things of that nature, things you just don't see up on the wall at your LCS on the regular. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. Go check out my toy channel while you're at it, Toy Informer, and give it a sub if you like toys and other collectibles outside of comics. And if you haven't given Whatnot a try, now's your chance. First-time users, free $15 to spend on whatever you want with whomever you want. No strings attached. You help out the channel, and you get yourself something nice. So you really got nothing to lose if you haven't tried it yet. And with that all said, if you want to see this week's selection of books, just hang on for a few seconds after the intro, and I will be right back. All right, so just to kick us off this week, if my shirt didn't give it away, yes, we are going to look at a few Mobile Armored Strike Command variants. M.A.S.K, one of my favorite 80s properties. Cool toy line, and they made some comics over at IDW, so we do have a few variants we could talk about for this series. Starting off with this, number one, M.A.S.K. This is a retailer exclusive cover because this is actually the UK Diamond Summit variant. So it is a sketch version of, I think, the subscription variant on the regular first issue. This is done by Andrew Griffith. This was back in 2016. But like I said, this was given out at the Diamond Summit over in the UK. So this one isn't that easy to come by. Don't know how many copies are printed, so we're not even going to estimate there or guesstimate or guess or venture a thought at what there might be printed for this. But we will look at the census and say that there are only 3. So in nearly 10 years out there in the streets on the market, we only have 2 9/8s and a single 9/6, which is a signature series, by the way. That's it. 3 copies of this book given out at the Diamond Retailer Summit over in the UK. Cool. And if you want to see what this thing sells for, well, I'm curious too, but we've got no recent sales to report, so I don't know what the price may be, nor would I know what somebody might ask for it, because there are also none listed right now. So this one's just not out there. Granted, maybe across the pond, story could be different, so our friends over in the UK, you let me know if you guys see this out there, because I'd just be curious. I'm not a huge fan of the black and white version of covers, but this is still kind of a fun exclusive. And, there's one of those fun little tidbits and one of those little books that's out there that you just keep an eye out for. And who knows, maybe one day you could stumble across it. All right, with this series, there also was a 1 in 25 for the new number 1. And it kind of harkens back to that original toy box. Remember the box design? But yeah, here we go. So you got Matt Tracker right there on the front. Pretty fun. Pretty cool callback, throwback to that old box look. This is the 1 in 25. Came out in November 2016. This one, we do have an estimated print run. This is from Comic-Con, so the estimated print run for this book back in November 2016 was 9,677. So if we do our ratio math of a 1 in 25 incentive and divide that number by 25, that's where I got the number 387 copies. That does not mean that there are actually 387 copies of this book. It's just a ballpark guess that we can just throw out to get some sense of how many may be out there. Again, we don't know, and there is no way to know exactly how many were printed or how many are available or how many are floating out there in the ether. There's no way to know for sure. But this is our best guess to give us an estimate, some sense. It's not gospel, it's not set in stone, nor do I think you should set these numbers in stone or expect these numbers to be this low or this high, etc. It's just a guess. It's a guess. So, with that all said, what's not a guess is what we can actually see in the CGC census, which is all of 2 copies. 2 copies graded on this one, both 9/8. This is, yes, retailer incentive B. So the B is the 1 in 25 because there is a 1 in 10, which we'll get to in a second, but only 2. Only 2 graded. Both 9/8, but only 2 graded. None sold, just like our last book. So, despite the fact that this is not a Diamond Summit retailer exclusive, this was an incentive variant. Still, nothing sold within the last 3 months for us to report, nor were there any available online on eBay right now for me to give you a sense of what people are asking for this book. So, who knows? Who knows? And as I mentioned, this is the 1 in 25, the retailer incentive cover B. There is a retailer incentive cover A, which is this, which is the 1 in 10. We're not going to go into the numbers on this one because we don't need to spend that extra time. There's already a 1 in 25 and a retailer exclusive for number 1. So 1 in 10 is obviously going to be a few more of them. So if you find it, great. I did see a couple of these out there on the market, and they are not that expensive. That is also something interesting about this series. While there is the random expensive book, like there was a 1 in 50, which we've covered on an earlier show for this M.A.S.K book. This M.A.S.K number 1, there was a Paul Pope 1 in 50. We covered that one already. That one can get pricey because the Paul Pope, it's a 1 in 50. Sure. But even with some of these other variants we're going to get into in a second, they may be very, very difficult to find, but that does not mean they are going to be expensive. Rarity alone doesn't always equate to higher prices. So, case in point, let's get on to issue 2. So, this is the retailer incentive cover for issue 2 of this M.A.S.K series. Once again, this was a 1 in 10. This was done by Marcelo Ferreira. December 2016, this came out. Comicron estimates put this book at about 5,900 copies. So, there are possibly, divided by 10, 590 copies of this. Again, ballpark guess. Not set in stone, but we can use that as a starting point, an idea of how many copies could be out there. We look in the CGC census and we see that once again this is a book that no one really is grading. We only have 2 copies once again. This time a 9/8 and a 9/6. That's it. 1 and 1. We also, just like our last couple of books, have no copies sold within the last 3 months to give us a sense of what this might cost. But unlike the other 2 books, there is one listed. So we do have a sense of what somebody's asking for this 1 in 10. And that is all of $12 with free shipping. Granted, they already note this is a very fine copy, so it is not going to be a 9/8 candidate. It's not near mint. They are already telling you that it's going to be slightly worn. So it's a very fine copy, but still $12 with free shipping. Consider half of that $12 is going to be the shipping cost. It's not too bad for a 1 in 10, regardless. So if you just like to collect things and you're not worried about the 9/8 or all that stuff, this is a decent copy and it's pretty cheap. So if you're interested in something like this, this is one you can look for. I do have a few of these M.A.S.K retailer incentives because I like M.A.S.K and I like collecting these oddball 1 in 10s from IDW personally, regardless of how much they might go for on the aftermarket. As you can see, $12. This is sitting there. Nobody's jumped. Granted, I know it's not a 9/8, but still, it's only $12. With that said, it's still not a lot of them out there. There's only the 1. So none have sold. Only 2 in the census. I don't know. I don't know how many are out there. Maybe these are filling boxes and in shops near you and just nobody's touching them. Or maybe these are just lost in the ether somewhere in a storage locker, buried away at some storage locker park somewhere. Who knows? Who knows? But we do know that issue 3 is up next, and we do have another 1 in 10. It's done by the same artist. This one took a couple of months for it to come out. This is in March of 2017. This one, print run, is dipping. Now we're in issue 3. It's down to 4,900. So our incentive was potentially 496 copies. So under 500 this time out on our guesstimate. Still pretty cool. Bunch of different M.A.S.K characters. I don't know if you remember M.A.S.K. They had the little figures too with the little helmets. They went inside the vehicles. They transformed into other vehicles. So car got wings that could fly. Motorcycle got helicopter blades that can fly with a helicopter, etc. There was one of the bad guys. He had a helicopter turned into a jet and back from a jet into a helicopter. Cool stuff. But this issue 3 also only has 2 copies in the census, just like the last one, a 9/8 and a 9/6. So, not a lot of copies. Also, just like the last one, no copies sold. And Just like the last one, there is one listed. This one, however, they want 25 bucks and another 16 and a half for shipping from the UK for us US buyers. So you're looking at a $41 purchase before taxes. And you got to wait for it to come over from the UK. Okay. So we see a little bit of a difference here. Don't know what the grade is on that copy that's being listed, but they're not calling out to the fact that it's like a very fine or anything like that. But you know, you got to check the pictures and take it for what it's worth. Sometimes buying things online and through eBay, it's a crapshoot. You don't know exactly what you're going to get. So don't always assume that everything listed is a 9.8. Just don't. You'll be much happier in life if you accept the fact that the chances of you getting a 9.8 copy from somewhere are slim. And if you do, it's a treat, not an expectation. But with that said, I'm going to do one more mask book. Again, they did a few more. We can cover this later, get back to these at some point, but I didn't want to do a whole mask mobile armored strike command show. I just wanted to do a few at the start, and we're going to wrap this part of the show up with number 4. Now, if you look in certain online sites, there might be some confusion over what is the retailer incentive and which is the subscription cover. So you got to be careful as some pictures are wonky. Like it looks like they're vice versa. But this cover here is the RI cover for issue 4. This is, again, another 1 in 10. March 2017, so same month as the last one. One came out early in the month. One came out right at the tail end. No print run numbers on this one. So no guesstimates. So it didn't hit Comicron's minimum or just didn't register on there. So we don't know what the estimate is. Could be under 3,000, could be under 4,000, which would make our, again, 1 in 10, 300 or 400. Who knows? It's all a guess anyway. But once again, we can see there are only 2 in the census. This time out, another pair of 9.8s, and that's it. So not a lot of people grading these either. This is a very like small market and very niche, like little segment of the community that are into comics and M.A.S.K and incentives and grading. So all of those things equate to only 2 copies in the census. Once again, not surprised, none of these have sold lately. Nobody's talking about M.A.S.K, and I'm not trying to drum up interest in the property. I just like it personally. But outside of wanting to cover these on a toy show soon, yeah, I got no stake in this game. Like I said, I have a few of these just for my own collection, but they're not going anywhere. I just got them for me. But none have sold. But this particular book and this copy actually has a couple available. Not a ton. Not a ton. I found 3. But you can see here, 20 bucks, 20 bucks, about what I would expect. Tough to find, 1 in 10 for IDW. And then at the same time, my comic shop has one listed for all of $2.70. Granted, it's a fine copy, so it might be a little banged up. Especially, well, my comic shop, I always feel like they undergrade a little bit. At least I found some of the older books that I've gotten from them were they undergraded, but which is a good thing. But still, you're gonna get a fine copy. It's not even very fine. It's not even close to near mint. So it's still only $2.70. And if you probably go directly to my comic shop and don't buy it from eBay, you save like 10% off because they don't have the eBay fees worked into the price. So if you buy it directly from my comic shop, any of the books, anything you find on eBay that my comic shop has listed, they generally have it available directly from their own site. It's usually cheaper just to buy it directly from them than it is to go through eBay. But choice is yours. Do what you like. But that all said, there are 3 copies here for this number 4. I'm going to leave this here for now. We can come back. There were a few more in this series before the series ended, but we're going to shift gears and head on over to Marvel for a Taskmaster variant. So here we have Taskmaster issue 1. This is a Bradshaw cover, Nick Bradshaw, November of 2020. This was a 1 in 50 incentive. So again, just to remind you guys what that means, it means stores, shops, your LCS had to order at least 50 copies of this book before they would qualify for this incentive. Now, those copies could be spread over however many different variant covers they have, the open order ones. So if Marvel has like 5 different open order covers, they can order 10 of each and they would qualify. As long as they order 50 of the open order book, they can then order 1 of these on top of that for that same price, which is, whatever their discount is. Discounts could be different depending on their relationships with their distributor. Bigger places could get a bigger discount, or they've been there for a long time, so they might get a higher discount, etc. Point being, they're getting it at a discount as long as they meet certain criteria and order enough copies. That said, you then have to be able to get and procure this from your shop if they have one of these 1 in 50. So it's not always the easiest thing because you're also competing with other collectors who may want the same book. That all said, 1 in 50. Since it was in 2020 during the pandemic, we do not have estimated print run numbers. Can't even rely on Comicron to give us a ballpark guess that we can then ballpark guess the incentive. So, no idea how many copies of this are printed. I do have an idea that there are only 11 copies in the CGC census. 10 of them are 9/8, and there is a single 9/6. Still not a lot for this book. It is a 1 in 50 after all, but still not a lot. But even though it's a 1 in 50, it doesn't sell for a ton. Recent sales, these were all at auction, mind you. One ended end of July for $28 on 8 bids. One ended on June 24th for $7.50 on 5 bids. Yes, $7.50 for 1 in 50. And another one ended for $15.50 on 14 bids back in May. Those are all staggered out over a month. They all have the same shipping cost, all listed basically, well, very similarly. A couple of these might have been from the same seller. They might have multiple copies stashed. Maybe they got them in a diamond clear out sale, pallet sale, one of those things, because once again, we know that doing that ratio math doesn't mean that's exactly what exists. Whatever is printed. And sometimes those books that get printed never make it to shops because shops don't order enough to qualify to get those 1 in 50 incentives. But they were printed. They were printed in case shops did, or reorders, etc., damages for copies that did go out. There are extras. Sometimes those extras make it out into the market, whether, again, they be through diamond pallet sales after the fact. Those are discounts that are kind of fire sales that go online directly to retailers. Sometimes these things get bulked out to Ollie's, Five and Below, Walmart in those collector packs. And that's how people sometimes find these hard to find and rare variants in those packs because they can find their way there. It's not to say they always do or anything like that, but that is how that sometimes can happen. With that said, it's still pretty cheap, all of these. And if you look at what's available, I did find a couple out there. I found 4, actually. Yeah, some looking for ratio 50, 60, somebody looking for 90. But then I see, once again, there's another one at auction. Looks very similar to one of those other listings, and it is currently at $2.99 with no bids just yet. Granted, 4 days left, so there's still a lot of time. But who knows? Could be under $10 again. Could be up to almost 30. It depends on the action that this one draws. But with that all said, this one, multiple copies. We can already know this is going to just be on the hard to find section. Let's move on, though, to issue 2 of Taskmaster. Yep, you know where we're going with this. So we're going to go to number 2 first. This is only a 1 in 25. They did not do a... I'm sorry. Before I jump to issue 2, this is the 1 in 25 for issue 1. We're not going to go into the details and run all the numbers on that because, again, you can see there's already multiple copies of the 1 in 50. The 1 in 25, there's, in theory, going to be twice as many of them. But I wanted to show you the cover anyway and let you know that a 1 in 25 does exist for issue 1. Sorry, I was getting ahead of myself and getting to this book, which is issue 2's 1 in 25. And this is a Salvador LaRocca cover, December 2020. It's, again, no estimated print run numbers on it for us to guess. But in the census, there are all of 7 copies. 5/9/8, 1/9/6, 1/9/4, and that is it. So not a lot of action on the grading here either. Doesn't mean there's not a ton out there or a few out there. It's just a number. It's just a piece of the puzzle that we can put in here to make an informed, decision on whether you want to go and get one of these for yourself. With that, no one else has purchased one of these recently. So no copies sold within the last 3 months on eBay. And right now, there are only a pair listed. Yes, there's still a pair, but only a pair listed. One seeking $35 and the other is looking for $80, and it's got a dozen watchers on it too. Both of them calling this, well, very, very rare. And it is. Oh, I'm sorry. The $80 is actually a 9/8. I didn't even look at that. That $80 is for a 9/8 of this 1 in 25. That makes me think differently about this. It's very cheap, actually, but in all things considered, for a 1 in 25. You generally don't see 1 in 25 9/8 go for under $100 because of the cost of the book itself and then grading fees, etc. So, yeah, I don't know. Interesting. But that's issue 2. But the book that most people know and think about this series for is the next issue, which is issue 3. This 1 in 25. Again, Black Widow featuring heavily on the cover. And the reason this one is popular is because it is technically the first appearance of Tiger Division. You know, that team out of Korea that they got their own little spin-off title, etc. I believe it's just kind of a cameo in this book, but still, first appearance is generally considered this book here, this Taskmaster 3. There is a second print incentive on this as well, which we've covered before. I might have even covered this book before, but we're going to look at it again really quickly as part of this 3-issue run. Shane Davis cover, February 2021, 1 in 25. No idea on the print run, so we'll go right to the census, which has a healthy 106 copies in it. So 69 eighths, 31 9/6s, 9 9/4s, bunch of others rounding that out for over 100 copies in the census for that book. So once again, that first appearance of Tiger Division was very popular, selling very well for a while. You know, it equated to a lot of people actually grading the book as opposed to issue 1 and 2, as you saw previously. Copies sold. You can also see the price on this thing. Raw copies sold at auction, 16 bids for almost $170 back in July. Also in July, a 9/6 sold for $140 on 7 bids. And then another raw sold back in May on 12 bids for over $200 at $202.50. Near mint copy. It's a pretty expensive book, all things considered, because again, spec related to it. That all said, if you were searching for one and shopping for one, well, there are copies out there. Because again, it's an expensive book. They come out of the woodwork once they start selling. There's more than just these 3. I don't believe there's a ton more, but there's a couple more. 150 raw, 360 raw, 360 for a 9/8 as well. So a little pricey there, but again, it's first appearance. Who knows if it ever equates to anything? Taguchi, is that remember there's the character in Tiger Division? I don't know. Invest however you like. I'm just sharing that it was an interesting book that is kind of tough to come across. And with that, you know what else is tough to come across? Disney books. I know I covered the Haunted Mansion ones before. We're going to shift gears over to Disney Kingdoms, this time looking at Figment, that imaginary purple dragon. So, Figment. There was a 1 in 25 for this first comic from out of Disney Kingdoms here back in June of 2014. And it actually had an estimated print run of a little over 12,000, almost 13,000. So our incentive is right around 500 copies. Again, guess it's a guesstimate number based off of that simple ratio math that I've already explained. In the census for this thing, there are only 8 copies, 5 9/8s and 3 9/6s. That's it. In a decade, that's all that's been graded for this weird Disney Figment book. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Not everybody collects the kids angle with Disney Kingdoms, but there is a market for it. There is a market for it, as we've seen with the recent reintroduction of Uncle Scrooge and DuckTales, etc. There's a market for these books and that nostalgia and those Disney collectors. Just saying. This particular book had a couple sales recently in the last 3 months. A raw sold on a best offer of $34. They accepted less than $34. And meanwhile, a 9/8 sold for $225. Not too bad. Not too bad for Figment. More than just these 3 out there right now. Raw's going about $40. 9/8 looking at $200 to $300. So the market is about what it is. What's selling is about what's being asked for. So it seems pretty stable, and you know what you've got if you find one of these on your own out there in the wild. That's again why I'm telling you this. I'm not trying to push you to go and buy any of these books that are listed, if any are listed. I'm just giving you an idea of what the market is asking, what the market is paying. So in case you go to your store, your shop, your yard sale fleet, wherever you're doing your comic hunting, you find weird stuff like this, you know what the price should be. Or what you found. If you found it for like $1, you see how much of a profit you could potentially make if you decide to flip it yourself. With that said, this is the 1 in 25. There was also a 1 in 50 for that first series, and that is this sketch cover here. So 1 in 50, same details here, June of 2014, same print run on the same book. So The incentive is technically going to be about half that. So maybe around 250 of these. Maybe, potentially. In the census, we do have more than the 1 in 25. So more people graded this one with 21 total, 13 9/8s, 5 9/6s, and then a few others just rounding that out. One sold within the last 3 months for all of $12.69 at auction on 2 bids as of the beginning of July. So once again, just because things are tough or hard to find doesn't mean they're automatically expensive. Is this a bargain? Is this a steal? I would say so, because this is a weird kind of tough book you're going to go and find. It doesn't mean it has to be expensive. It has to be hundreds of dollars or anything like that. But still, I'm just saying, $12, all things considered, for a 1 in 50 is a price that I personally would be willing to pay for something like this, because I think it's kind of, fun, kind of unique, kind of weird. And $12 ain't the end of the world. That said, other people have copies listed looking for $350 raw. Or you can see there's a whole set, there's a whole pile that has the 1 in 25. It's got the 1 in 50. There's a third print mixed in there. It's issue 2, later printings, etc. So it's like a whole weird little variant packet. $700 though they want for that. And it looks like there's only 8 books in there. $700, still pretty steep. But $350 raw is what they're asking. Somebody won one at auction for $12. Somebody else is asking $350. Who's right? Is it somewhere in the middle? Doesn't matter. It's just, I'm just giving you information. You do with it what you choose. With that said, Figment also had a second volume that came out the next year. And with it, volume 2, there was another 1 in 25 variant here. This one came out in September of 2015. Print run was up from the last time. So it was a little over 20,000. So our incentive here is over 800, potentially. Potentially. Again, just giving you the numbers. If they're available, I'll give them to you and run them for you. In the census, there are still only 3 on this book. So not as many graded on volume 2, with 2 9/8s and 1 9/6. Also, no one has purchased one of these in the last 3 months. And there is all of one listed right now. And it's at auction starting at $10 with no bids. Over 5 days left, so it's going to have time. But $10 at auction. We'll find out what the market is come Sunday when this one ends. But that's it. Unsold. One out there. We'll see. Maybe nobody bids and this just gets unsold. Who knows? But there it is. Figment Volume 2, number 1, the 1 in 25. And lastly, we have a book that I covered on the Hot 10 in the notable sales that I've been wanting to cover here on this show for a while. Buddy Steve Horn actually won one of these. That's who I was referring to, I think, on the Hot 10 we were filming. Steve, he actually got one of these. I sent like a screenshot. He bought one of these on Whatnot. So once again, Whatnot. Sometimes there's weird stuff out there. If you know what you're looking at, you can find stuff pretty cheap. And I think he got this at a very, very good price. I'm not going to tell you what he paid because I don't remember off the top of my head, but I do remember ballpark number, and it was not that much. And I would have happily paid the same because I'm a Jim Lee fan. This is a unique cover. This is a Make-A-Wish book. They did not make a ton of these. He designed this suit. Yes, it is like a DC Iron Man look, but this is the suit number 1. Jim Lee from 2014. Estimates and research that I found online put this number at maybe 350 copies. It just would have been a limited print run on this because, again, it was a book made as part of a Make-A-Wish. This book does have a few graded, not a ton, but there are a dozen in the census. There is only 1 9/8, 1 9/6, 4 9/4s, 4 9/2s, 1 9/0, and 1 8/5. I actually went through each and every one of these just to lay out the fact that there are only a dozen of these. And with that, one of the 9/4s, I believe, sold for $1,000 last week. And that's why I put it on the notable sales. 1, because this is a rare book that rarely sells. But 2, $1,000 for a 9/4 ain't half bad. Just saying. But as hard as this may be to find, as you're out there searching in the wild for this, there are copies online. And prices aren't bargains. Let's just put it that way. Yes, I found 5 out there right now, looking for anywhere from a 9/2, looking for $500, a 7/5 signed from CBCS. Yeah, again, when I run the CGC numbers, I'm not even giving you the CBCS side of things because their population report's kind of harder to navigate. So I did it for a little while, and it just wasn't worth the effort. But They do have copies graded. So also remember that. Just because it says you find people talking like, oh, there's only like 2 in the census. Yeah, which census? Because there could be more in the other one. But that all said, CBCS 7.5 signature series looking for a grand, another 9.2 looking for just over a grand, and then a raw that they're estimating at a very fine 8.0, a raw very fine, asking $1,400. Point being, oh, and don't forget the 2K 9.4. So the highest graded over at CBCS apparently is a 9.4, and its signature series. They're looking for 2K. Point being, expensive book, one you don't see very often, but there are copies available online if you're willing to pay that extra little bit of money. And with that all said, let's just run the numbers for this week. I think I had about 11 books maybe for you, and 7 of these, we'll just put these down in the hard to find section because there are at least 2 or more, so multiple copies available at this moment in time. Again, this is a snapshot just based off of this week. We do this in a month with these same books. It could be a different story. This is just for fun. I like looking into this stuff. These are the books I decided I wanted to look into this week, so that's why we covered them this week. But as of this week, these 7 are hard to find, whereas these 5 all either had only 1 copy or, in most cases, no copies available for these books. I believe most of the M.A.S.K books had nothing listed. I think we might have had 1 for number 3, and then the Figment had 1. But that said, we'll call these because they meet our criteria, our ghosts for this week. Again, snapshot doesn't mean next month it won't be a different story. Maybe it will be. Who knows? But this is all just for fun anyway. But I just want to say thank you for stopping by and checking this out. I really do appreciate all the support for the channel here, as well as my Toy Informer channel over there. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, look in the link below. Go give me a sub. I could use it. Again, it's only a month old. I'm still starting it out with some new series and new shows. I got another new one I'm going to be working on for later this week. That should be also kind of fun. Again, it's not all just about toys. I did a couple of video game shows already over there, and I'm going to be doing some other weird collectibles too. Some of the fun stuff we covered on TAC here and there, I'm just going to do it as a separate little segment over there. Weird collectibles, etc. So, you like weird stuff, some stuff that might be worth money. You also collect weird stuff, and now you got a place you can share that love of collecting old school Trapper Keepers or lunch boxes or sneakers or hats or whatever it might be, vintage t-shirts. All that stuff is fair game that I'm going to cover over there on the channel. So with that all said, thanks for stopping by and checking this out, and I'll be back soon with some more content. All right, later.